Mia, welcome to Bitch is a Bad Word.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I am so excited about this conversation. I was connected to you from one of our mutual connections on the old-fashioned way of meeting, Instagram. And
Yes.
I think that you have a fascinating storytelling vision. I like the way that you really kind of, everything I've followed on you, I'm like, you really have a great way of just telling the story that people like who've experienced domestic violence, who experience anything, that they need to hear it in this way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reason I wrote my book is because the story of what happened is there's no concise way to tell it. There's no concise way to summarize it. And so that's why I put it all in a book. And then, as you know, this kind of dynamic where there's abuse and it's, in my case, not physical. Well, there was some slight physical component, but more of an icky sexual abuse component. But there was no physical violence and in that way. But the abuse was psychological, which makes it harder to understand what's going on. And after the show, Bad Vegan came out on Netflix, which I had a lot of issues with, but I was just bombarded by people reaching out. And I was really surprised at how many people were it's like, still, even though it came out a couple of years ago, still I'm getting people reaching out all the time. I went through something similar. I can totally relate to some people saying I felt like I was watching my own story and it's completely eerie and gave me the chills how similar these situations are. And as you know, and I've heard you say it on your other episodes, it's like these guys who are manipulative and they all got the same handbook.
It is. We're like trying to figure out where it is.
Where's the handbook and can they all be burned?
Yes. I'm like, if we're burning other books, why don't we burn that fucking book? Because that needs to go.
Yeah. I think I've had these conversations. I can't remember with who, but I think that a lot of it is intuitive. I just think that a lot of that stuff is weirdly intuitive. And then I think they also do study manipulation and, how to mess with people. But intuitive and, they sort of learn it over time. But anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like as we know, they are masters at their craft and they're masturbators and they learn and they, they watch and, there's nobody paying more attention to you than the person that's wearing that mask. Right. And you're just like, floating around just, oh, wow, they're just so into me. Everything about them is so amazing. Wow, they love everything about me while they're building you up on that pedestal. And as we know, we don't get to stay on that pedestal for very long.
Yeah. Yeah. There's usually like a lot of data mining. And in my case, I actually just posted the blog because I was talking about it with Mark Vicente, who was in the NXIVM cult, and he has a podcast. And my situation was very, there's tons of situations where people who, whether, you would diagnose them as a narcissist or whatever you would diagnose them as, it sort of all happens in the context more of a relationship and what a normal relationship would look like, but it has that totally messed up element, which is super destructive and terrible. And my situation was much more like being in a cult of one. So it was much more like being pulled into a cult because it wasn't like this romantic fall in love kind of a thing. And the love bombing wasn't so much love bombing as it was like attention, validation, the whole future faking, just making all these promises. And, and then the way that he sort of got me hooked was just I did think I was going to get rid of him a bunch of times in the beginning, like very early on. And he just kept finding a way to come back and come back and come back. And then eventually it all unraveled and imploded and, to great destructive effect, unfortunately, not just for me, but for all kinds of other people as well, which is the worst part. It's one thing if you get hurt, but, for me, my entire business was destroyed and my employees lost their jobs and income, and investors and people lost money, and my mother. And so, yeah, that's been a difficult part of it. But there were no kids involved. So,
which doesn't, I mean, we were saying this right before the show started. When you add the kids to the kid element to a situation like this, it just is tenfold, and it's like, it goes on forever. And as long as the kids are, especially if they're young, and then even still, I mean, as there's always going to be things that you're going to need to cross paths with that other person, which makes it so much more difficult. But it still is like the human element, the human factor, that there's somebody out there that's just so hell bent on destroying your life and destroying your peace and just breaking you down and belittling you to nothing, and anything that's like, they just burn the path and like with it, it's just like, we're going to just tear everything down, and then we're going to set it on fire. And that's what with no consequence. Please go check out our Patreon. It is growing. There is a badass community handing over there. Patreon.com/bitch is a bad word. There's free tiers. There's paid for tiers. The paid for tiers give you ad-free listening, merch drops, merch discounts. We have a private Discord server where every single member is vetted. We personally look at their license so you can build your bestie gang, rebuild your network, rebuild your net worth over there on Patreon. Patreon.com/bitch is a bad word. How did you guys meet?
I unfortunately, I met him, I thought, I wasn't trying to meet anybody online, but it was through what was then called Twitter. And I had a friendship with Alec Baldwin because, whatever, I just did. And Alec had recently joined Twitter. And I guess this guy must have, like, right when he joined, must have started chatting with him. But for whatever reason, Alec followed this guy back. So they followed each other. And I'm thinking, like, Alec only followed a handful of people, and me and some other people. And so I'm like, oh, he must know this guy. And so that's how I first met him, was through these tweet exchanges. And then we started DMing each other. And I just thought, like, here's this funny guy. He was very funny and witty. And then we started talking in our DMs. And, now I tell people all the time, just to be super careful when you meet somebody in an online context, whether I've never been on a dating app, but I mean, in that context, they're able to feed you precisely what they want, right? So they can tell you whatever they want. They can feed you, as opposed to, like, if you met somebody at work, their colleagues, you have things in common, you get to observe them in their life and know things about them. Whereas when you're meeting somebody in an online way, it's like they're able to selectively feed you what they want. And he built up this persona as this very mysterious guy with all kinds of resources and access. And I was sort of intrigued and overwhelmed and busy. And I was heartbroken for the first time in my life after a really sweet, lovely 4-year relationship with a much younger guy. And was just kind of in a vulnerable state in that way. And so, yeah, he slid into my DMs. And then the other thing he did that was very strategic is spent a lot of time. He didn't live in New York. He was living in Massachusetts, and he spent a lot of time doing the stuff that he does and getting me emotionally hooked and attached in all these various ways through conversations and photos he sent me and all of our interactions. He sort of built himself up. And as you probably know, it's kind of like when you, very early in a relationship, you sort of project what you want into somebody, and it makes it easy to miss little red flags or rationalize them away, even when you do see them. So by the time I met him, when I met him, he didn't look like he did. He looked he was heavier, not huge like he was eventually, but he was heavier. He looked like one of those defensive football players, with a bunch of extra padding. And he said he'd gotten injured and through his mysterious work or whatnot. And, I'm like, well, I'm not that shallow that it's like I'm going to suddenly be repulsed by somebody. But the point is, he didn't look the way that he had in the photos that he sent me. And I made a website to go with my book, and I actually put up a bunch of pictures to go along with most of the chapters. And so I put up a bunch of those pictures that he originally sent me. And somebody recently was like, oh, I could see why you were attracted to him. He looks really good in those photos. But yeah, he did not look as great in person. But either way, he'd already got me so emotionally invested that, and also, big mistake. I let him come to my home, which was dumb, but I don't know. I just felt like I knew him by then. And, but that was strategic on his part because he sort of already got me attached. But even still, after that first time I met him, I thought like, well, I guess that wasn't really what I thought. But then he goes away, there's distance, and then he keeps communicating with me and sort of sucks me back in. And I can't tell you how many times early on, I'd see him and be like, oh, and then he borrowed, quotes, money from me and didn't give it back to me. But then I'm angry, but then I want the money back. So it's, of course, he's not just going to send it to me. He's like, oh, I'll bring you the money. And then he comes back and does his, is able to mess with my head a bit more. And basically, this happened. It just got worse and worse over a period of years and years and years. And it ultimately led to the destruction of everything and criminal charges being filed against me. And just basically a colossal shit show. And then Netflix made a show about it.
Thank you, Netflix.
Yeah.
But not thank you to this part of the story because, what's fascinating is like, as I'm even just listening to you recount like him presenting one way with photographs, when we're not speaking to or we're not in person with somebody, you don't have those, like the
spidey sense. Yeah. The vibes.
Sense, right? Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's easier that way because I would imagine you're an intelligent woman. You would have, and if he looked different, not to say that it's a vanity thing, but I mean, obviously like attraction component, you physically vibe on someone. And when the vibes aren't vibing, then you're like I'm done, like later, but our heads and our heart don't often believe the same story.
Yeah. And also, I mean, knowing what I know now, I mean, he's such a skilled manipulator that he's probably doing all kinds of things, saying certain things, the way he's presenting certain things, probably being extremely manipulative from the start in ways that I don't even really understand what's going on. And so, they kind of get you on an emotional level, which is more subconscious. And in my case, he was really tapping into like my hopes and dreams.
Right. Okay. So, and that to me is like, that's the hard part. That's like the emotional. That's a new word. We're going to put that in the dictionary, but the emotional manipulation that happens and pisses me off more than anything because it's like, you're in your head all the time and this ruminating and they're just like this worm in your brain, just sort of like going through all parts of every single part of you. And it's like, I've been in the situation when I imagine you too, where you're like recounting it. Like, I don't remember, I swear to God, he said it this way. And maybe if I hadn't done this and you're just kind of back and forth. And then the fact that they can just swoop back in as if, when you start questioning things, you start feeling crazy. Like, well,
and what they do is create a lot of confusion and also keep you really busy. So you're sort of bombarded with the thing is, it was probably easy for him because I was really busy with my company and my work, and I was already in a state of just kind of generally being overwhelmed and tired. And he, over time, more and more, would kind of overwhelm me with information. And when I'd asked him a question, I'd get an answer that was you may be familiar with the term word salad.
Yes.
Where it's like they answer the question, but they don't answer the question. And then you're more confused. And then you're trying to ask for explanation. And then they give you more confusing stuff. And the thing about confusing somebody is, and then later on it morphed into, his deliberate use of fear. And both of those things create conditions where they can then, they're then able to, it sounds weird, but like implant concepts or things or get you to do stuff. Because people ask me all the time, what were you thinking when you sent him all these wires? And what were you thinking when you did this and that? And I'm like, I think the answer is that I wasn't thinking, or I don't know what I was thinking, or somehow he hijacked my thinking. And that's, by definition, when you're psychologically manipulated, it's going to be difficult to explain it because, of course, you don't know what's happening at the time. You can't see it happening.
So as it's happening, and how did the first wire, or how did the first conversation? Do you even remember?
The first time he asked me to borrow money, he made it seem like it was some kind of crazy emergency and it was just temporary. And I'm sure he had pegged me as one of those people where there's certain types of people that are just hyper accommodating, right? And not, in the moment, you don't want to be like, oh, are you full of shit? So I just was like, well, okay, I can get the money. Like, sure. Okay. And I don't remember the amount. It was probably, over maybe it was like $6,000 or something like that. And so I gave him the money, and then like from there, it just spiraled and got worse and worse. And over time, bigger and bigger amounts of money to the point where, it's, I realize when I say out loud that it turned into like a couple of $1 million, which is not, I'm not like a person that has a lot. I never had lots of money then. I obviously don't now. So it's not like I'm a person that had loads of money and he just got some of it. It was like it all came out through me, through the business, and and ultimately destroyed it, which was heartbreaking on so many levels because it's, that business was my whole life. That business was for me, like, I'm not somebody that I think I knew early that I didn't want to have children, and I knew that wasn't my future. And my whole future and life's purpose was that business. And in fact, the people who worked there felt like family, and, they sort of called me Sarmama. And I was like the mama of the business. And, I would have done anything for that business, which he knew. This is what they do. They figure out what means the most to you in the world, and then they weaponize that. And so he knew that I would do anything to be able to grow the business and save the business, but ultimately ended up that by weaponizing that, he got, it ended up destroying the business, which was like my biggest nightmare come true. And then some, and then I'm criminally prosecuted for it too, which was a whole other,
Can you talk about that part?
Yeah. I went to Rikers for 4 months. I pled guilty because it was a situation where it was such a messed up situation, and to go through a whole trial, I didn't have any money for that. Even going through a trial itself would be so gut-wrenchingly painful. And when somebody's telling you that you're going to get, and the prosecutor was, let's just say one of those prosecutors where they just want to get you. They don't really care what really happened. And it was clear she wanted to get me, and they charged me and him with the same things. And they never prosecuted him for what he did to me, even though it was obvious. They never prosecuted him for what he did to my mother, even though it was all there and it was obvious. Like the whole thing was, the way that criminal case was handled is so, disappointing. And I was just saying on another podcast recently that for some reason it hadn't occurred to me, but I was like, I wonder if the judge in my case would come across my book and read it. Because the judge at least said to me, it seems clear you tried to run your business in good faith. So, I mean, I was charged with as if I had defrauded investors and because I hadn't paid sales tax when the business was running out of money because I had wired it all to him. That technically is tax fraud, even though there's no fraud. I wasn't misreporting numbers. But the point is the charges were scary enough. And also I don't know, the various attorneys that I worked with, it was like, yeah, you're going to plead guilty. But I had no idea that, I never expected. I just thought naively that, well, surely when they dig up more evidence, not to mention, like, logically, it doesn't make any sense. I didn't benefit from any of that. And the thing I cared about most was destroyed. And my record is squeaky clean. Like I went to a good school. I got straight A's. I worked on Wall Street. I've never gotten in trouble with the law ever. I never even got, what's it called? Oh, detention. Like I am still such a goody two shoes. Like I never got detention in high school or middle school, or like I never got in trouble in any way, shape, or form. Everything, the way I ran my business, like everybody, there was no like paying people under the table or like taking cash sales and not reporting it. Like I'm one of those people where I'm like, no, I want to be able to sleep at night. I do everything by the book. So for me to be charged was painful. And then I didn't think I would end up getting sentenced, but I did get sentenced to 4 months at Rikers. So yeah, spent 4 months there. And, among the many things I learned about life and people and humanity spending 4 months in Rikers is that a lot of the women are in Rikers because of fucking asshole dudes, like their boyfriends that made them hold the drugs, or all kinds of situations I heard there. And I noticed that pattern that a lot of the women there were there because of like asshole boyfriends or one way or another shitty men.
I just got chills thinking about that because that is like, you hear those, well, we've seen the movies, we've heard the stories, and you're living this real life scenario where you're not like, when you're dealing with somebody who's telling you one thing, doing another, and then there's like a whole other part of their master plan and, all the things that they're doing that you have no idea, like you don't see that part of the puppeteering, right? So you're just going along with, well, this makes sense, or what? And I mean, like, as a woman, as a good person, you're trusting, and like, why should you not be? Why, like, you get in these situations, like you wouldn't do this to somebody, so why would somebody do this to you?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, and what he did was so next level diabolical that I couldn't wrap my brain around somebody being able to do that. And so I just couldn't imagine that was the explanation. Therefore, I kept clinging on to his nonsense stories of like, oh, this is about to be over. This is about to be over. Because he just got me in deeper and deeper, and I was completely trapped. So, and yeah, I go in depth into that whole story and include a ton of dialogue that I recovered and things like journal entries that were recovered in my book, because I really take the reader through, through how it happened over time and my own observations on what I feel like was going on, the various dynamics at various stages along the way. And what was strange too is that I was pushing back on him a lot in the written correspondence that I had. It was like G chats. That's what I recovered. And in a lot of those G chats, that's actually what provides people tell me who read the book, is it like provides some comic relief in these very tense moments, because reading it can get a little bit harrowing, because it's like watching a movie when you watch like the person hear a noise in the basement where the Freddy Krueger is down there, and you like watch them go down to the basement, and you're like, no, don't go. And I feel like people reading my book are like, why? No, don't send him more money. And like, don't believe him again. But in a lot of the back and forth conversation, there's just so many times where I'm like making fun of him, I'm pushing back on him, but sometimes it's just, I'm like sarcastic and I'm calling him names, and very often I'm like, fuck you, you fat fuck. I mean, I curse like crazy. And sometimes it's kind of funny, but yeah. Anyway, it's quite a harrowing story.
We had a woman on the show, Bethany Joy Lenz, and she was in a cult.
Yes, I've read her book.
She's like, the next thing I know, $2 million later. And she's like, it does. She goes, it doesn't make sense when you're just saying it out loud.
Yeah.
Like, people are like, well, how the fuck did you do that? Like, I wouldn't do that. And you don't, like, it's hard to say that because you're just like, you're like the first, like, fool me once, shame on you kind of thing. It's like, well, you keep doing it because you're trying to, like, I would imagine like everything's going in the quicksand and you're trying to like dig out the last thing that he said it was going to happen. And that's not.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as you well know, I think it's easy for people from the outside to judge and say, oh, that would never happen to me, or I would have walked away, you know, or whatever. I would have left that asshole guy a lot earlier. And it's like, until you've been in a situation like this, you know, it's hard for people to understand how it happens.
Because it's so insidious. It's also like, we touched on this a little bit too. Like, I'm over the question, why did she stay? Why did she do it? Like, unless you're in it, and again, you're emotionally attached, you're in love with the person, you know, whatever the things are that are happening, and you're also getting royally fucked. You're getting you're getting like defrauded.
Yeah. And very often, you know, in like terrorized. I mean, he had me absolutely like gripped with fear at all times. And then, you know, made himself the person that was the only way I could get out of it. And, you know, it's very similar to what happens very often in cults. They make you afraid to leave, and they're, you know, I mean, that's what the relationship was more like, almost like he was not a guru, but kind of. I mean,
did he come from like a restaurateur background, or what did he just told you? Like,
no, not at all. I mean, he told me the story gets really weird, but I mean, he originally, and I mean, it's like, it's embarrassing now, but this is like classic move with people who are severe, you know, just next level con artists, is like, if anybody tells you they work in like black ops or some sort of clandestine thing, don't believe them unless, I don't know what, you'd have to have like tons of proof, but it's a very good cover.
Yeah, it's a good cover because you can't really have proof with a black hole.
Exactly. You know, it explains why he doesn't have more of a social media profile with all of his photos, and why there's not, you know, a LinkedIn profile. And it was quite the harrowing nightmare. And, you know, I wrote the book for a lot of reasons, but because I went through sort of a totally harrowing situation, but in comparison, not nearly that bad as compared to this one. And before that, and then I even stepped into something after, and I've heard also from a lot of people that they've stepped in these things more than once. And so, you know, what really means a lot to me is I just think about younger women and younger people. I always say women, but as you know, and I think you had a dude on not that long ago, this kind of stuff does happen to men, and I hear from tons of them. I mean, some diabolical women out there will do really fucked up shit. And I heard that one about the woman who, like, the guy, you know, one of her exes had killed themselves.
Oh, yes.
And she was like, I mean, that's a real, with that made me think immediately that, okay, that woman is a sociopath, because they kind of get off on that. It like gives them a thrill if they can drive somebody to that point, because it makes them feel powerful.
Yeah. Oh, they've taken somebody all the way down. Yes.
They end up in, professions, any profession where they have a lot of control over somebody's life. That's why even in the criminal justice system, prosecutors, very often have that, or like heart surgeons, brain surgeons.
Yeah. Yeah. A neurosurgeon, they say, like a lot of I don't know. I'm a lot of, someone's going to come at me about this statement, but like you've got a life in your hands, and it kind of takes some sort of like, you can't really be empathetic in that point, because you have to make a life or death situation, like a decision in one.
Yeah. But there's something that, there's something about having that kind of power over people's lives. And again, I think that's why a lot of them end up in the criminal justice system, whether a few cops or whatever, where they just get off on having that power over other people.
And they can just like walk over the body that they just destroyed.
Yeah, exactly. And so my point with all of this is that I love the idea of younger people reading my book, like not just people who've been through it or want to read about this weird, crazy, harrowing story. There's a lot about my background and my prior relationships and building the business, but I really means a lot to me that a lot of younger people might read it, and then because they have read it, almost like it's an inoculation, like they'll go forth into the world, and if they meet somebody who starts to exhibit any of these kinds of behaviors, they'll potentially recognize what's happening and be able to get out. So that means a lot to me.
I like that. I mean, like from my understanding too, there was things that he did to like sort of test your loyalty, and, if you do this, then, and that happens like in a lot of like physical domestic violence too. Like, if you tell, or, if you don't tell, they're testing. If you tell, I'm going to get in trouble. Like, don't there's a lot of like boundary pushing, but like loyalty testing. And that's super dangerous, because if you're an empathic person and a good person, that is kind of where you want to prove your loyalty, right? You're like, of course okay. And in that moment of like desperately trying to prove your loyalty, because you are that good girl, because you are the person who's like, okay, you tell me tell me to jump, and I'll ask how high. And it gets super dangerous, because at the same time, they're just like, again, they're manipulating the shit out of you. Yeah.
I mean, with me, he knows I'm one of those people that, even in my prior career, like I always worked really hard, and I will never let anybody down, and I will not give up, and I'll keep getting back up. And so he could push me. And, it's the whole story is really nutty. And what's grotesque is that he's out there now doing it to other people. It's not like he was punished and sent to jail for a long time at all. He got out before I had to go in, which is just, yeah.
I just like, okay, that to me, like that just blows my mind. And it, getting the message. There's somebody else who was on the show, and she's like, yeah, he's out. Like she found her ex on somebody's like comedy show, and then it was on YouTube. But this guy like strangled her and tried to kill her, and then somebody sends her like a YouTube clip, or she's watching a YouTube clip of this comedian, and he like pans to the audience, and she's like, oh my fucking God, that's him with a new person. Like, and she's like wanting to scream at the TV, like, he's going to try to kill you. He tried to kill me. And it's like the fact that they can just roam free as if it's nothing, and like no recourse, and just keep going. And again, no empathy. They don't give a fuck. Like they just keep on playing from the same book.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I don't know why I keep mentioning the judge in my case, just because he seemed reasonable and he seemed to understand that something bad had happened. But there was a show on Discovery, and Matt Max and I think it's available internationally now, called Toxic, hosted by Elizabeth Chambers.
Mm-hmm.
And she, each episode is a different story, and it's some sort of harrowing story about these completely fucked up guys. And all of the stories are violent until you get to episodes 5 and 6, and 5 and 6 are about the guy in my story, Anthony Stranges, but he changed his name to Anthony Knight. I keep I always say it because I'm like, so they changed his name. He changed his name to Anthony Knight, and they track him down and they find where he is, and he's in Arizona, and he's with this other woman, and she's this incredibly smart woman, and she tries to confront him, and there's this whole thing that happens, but he's probably with that same woman, and who knows where they are or what's happening, but it's gut-wrenching for me knowing that somebody else right now is getting destroyed in some way. And what if that person also gets criminally charged for something? It's gut-wrenching.
Yeah. That's the part where, I can't even imagine where you're going through, where you're just where's Waldo? You want to find this fucker and, warn everybody, but she's drinking the Kool-Aid. Unfortunately, there's you're the guilty party. You're the bad one. They always say, they always say that every single person I know that was in a DV situation, the person prior to them was the crazy one. Oh, she was crazy.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Because I think that, yeah. I know they do that all the time. I'm sure that he's told her that I'm completely out of my mind, and
it was you that you were the master manipulator. You were the person pulling the strings. And you talked about there was, coercive control is domestic abuse. It is so confusing. It doesn't make any sense when I don't even understand the word still when I hear it. I'm until I break it down, if you're coercing someone into doing something. And so that's typically things you would never normally do before. So you're saying, I never would have just kept giving him this money. I never would have, you were saying that he was sexually coercing you. We've heard this in the Diddy situations, they're being coerced into doing shit they wouldn't normally do. And then does that bring to you an added layer of shame and confusion? And this isn't I'm sort of not myself. I wouldn't have done this.
Yeah. I think it's the way it happened in my situation. And there's this one really gross chapter where I sort of detailed the whole thing. Basically, at the point when he started doing this, I was like, you're gross, don't ever touch me. I was not willingly doing anything with him at all. It was just off the table. And then I think it happened at a point where he thought that maybe I was gonna, assert my independence and get away from him or something. But he did it in a way that a lot of cult leaders do it, where they act like this is something that they have to do for you. And I don't know how much you know about cult situations, but it's very common in cult situations where they act like it's somehow part of your, it's necessary for your healing, because they always make it out like you're the one who has problems. You have emotional problems that need to be addressed, and you're the one that has this issue and that issue. And anyway, it's going to sound weird out of context. In the context of my book, by the time you get to that chapter, it's not such a big surprise. But he basically tells me that he's going to force me to, at this point, he's basically telling me I have to do anything he says. And so he effectively tells me that he's going to force me to do things, and I just have to do what he says, and offers me wine to drink first, and then blindfolds me, and then proceeds to do all this gross stuff, and leaving me feeling, in this very confused way. I remember like, it's weird because I have like funny memories of the whole episode, but I remember having this feeling of like, oh, now I know what it feels like to be raped, even though it's weird when it's the person that you know so well, you know. But and then also like weird because he told me he was going to do it, so it just was like confusing and icky and grotesque. And I was asked about it at the end of a 12-hour day of interviewing for that show that they named Grossly Bad Vegan. And I tell the whole, I'm asked about it. I tell the story. I start crying. And I was told that part of the interview was so incredibly compelling, and they all give me hugs after, and it was brutal to and humiliating. I mean, it was my first day interviewing, and I don't know all these people on the camera crew, and they're all mostly dudes, and like it was horrible. But I was told, oh, it's such an, that was so compelling, and so I was steeling myself when I saw the show for the first time. I'm thinking like that I'm going to be embarrassed because I'm like ugly crying. Like, oh, my face is going to look like, there's always they make memes out of people ugly crying. Yeah. So I'm sort of steeling myself for that. And it gets to the part where I would have then told that part of the story, and they just cut it out. It's like not in the quote docuseries. I refuse to call it a docuseries because it shouldn't be allowed to be called that. But they cut it out, and it was like, as if it didn't happen. And I mean, it was deliberate because they ended up putting in doing this manipulative thing at the end of the show that made half the people think that like, ooh, twisty ending. She was in on it all along. So
no, that's so fucked up, because like, then you're like you've given up. I don't like that at all. Because then that just takes away just everything, the psychological abuse, the physical, sexual assaulting. I mean, that's at the heart of all domestic violence relationships. And when him doing that to you is no different. You're in a relationship with somebody. It doesn't matter if you're married or not. It doesn't matter the nuances, like all the other shit. At the end of the day, you're a survivor of domestic abuse.
Yeah, I mean, it's like another level of breaking you down and exerting control.
And then there was, like you were saying, there was like sleep deprivation, gaslighting,
Yeah.
all of these tactics that just, again, and you're going back to how you referred to it as a cult of one. The same person who's hurting you is the same person who's like turning around and loving on you, and the same person that you're dependent upon. And then now you're like in this entanglement where you're like, you can't get out from underneath it. And they're your soother and your tormentor, as Dr. Ney says.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the way the situation developed, more and more, it's like he was the only one that could get me out of it. And people will say, oh, how come you didn't come to me for help? And I think, and say what? Like, it had gotten so out of control that to have stopped and like gone to somebody for help, I would have had to first of all, I never knew what was really going on. And he's always promising me like, oh, this is all going to be over, Right. And not meant by all going to be over, meaning I would get all the money back and then some and all this other, stuff. So basically it's like, it's almost like if you were, it's like if you were gambling and you've lost a bunch of money, but if you just play a little bit longer, you might win the jackpot. And then it's like all that shame and the whole thing will be wiped away. But if you stop and walk away, you have to accept the entire loss. And in my case, like just humiliating, fucked up situation that I didn't even understand and was so embarrassed and humiliated and frozen in fear. And he had instilled in me this idea that if I turned on him or walked away, like the rest of my life would be this dark misery and I'd lose everything I ever cared about. So I just was like constantly in this state of terror. And I was just talking to somebody about it today. I was saying, like, all these years later, I don't think my nervous system has fully come down.
Well, because like the one thing that all the things that you were afraid of happening if you left him ended up happening and then some.
Right.
So,
and then some. And then I'm criminally charged and all this other like wildly stressful stuff that, you know, is sort of stress upon stress upon stress. And so I've never been able to fully come down from that, I think.
You've got this, like, the things he was having you do were, you know, there was like ethical or legal implications that he was like also explaining away. So you're like, okay, but on paper, obviously it's like, well, it doesn't really, this doesn't add up here, but you're never thinking it's going to get exposed, or you're never thinking, he's telling you this is all going to work out. Don't worry about it. It's all going to get fixed before it's a problem. And then like massive, you know, like manipulation and coercion that's happening at the same time in tandem is like it's like the juxtaposition. It doesn't fucking make sense. You've got like the head, the heart, everything's misaligned. I'm sure at some point you're like, holy fuck, this is getting out of control. And he's all, nah, it's all good, babe.
I mean, the last amount of time with him, basically what ends up happening is he takes me away. It's a whole crazy story. So I was completely dissociated. I mean, I was like a zombie. And
well, it's the life in the silo as well.
Like I was not, I was a total zombie. I was not even there. And that takes a really long time to unwind from. And, you know, and I do so much work myself trying to heal in various ways and meditating and, you know, I do like tapping, which I find is one of the most effective things because it really is kind of affecting your nervous system. Do you know what tapping is? It's like, I find it so incredibly useful for healing.
I've seen it done. And I've heard that it is like magical.
And what's amazing about it is that if you're somebody like me that's not gonna, you know, doesn't have money to pay for therapy, EFT tapping or tapping basically is what it's called now. You can do it on yourself. You know, you can watch a bunch of YouTube videos. There's an app I use that I love called the Tapping Solution. So you can do it on yourself. And once you get used to it, I mean, I do it all the time and it helps me so much. It also helps to get a lot of emotions out. Like if you're feeling kind of stuck emotions, it helps get a lot of that stuff out. But even doing all of that, I think, you know, and so many years have gone by, but still, I have other kind of stressful things going on, but it occurred to me that I don't think my nervous system has gotten back to any sort of a reasonable baseline. I think I'd have to like win the lottery and go on vacation and lie on a beach and just, then it could come down, you know, but it's been a while. Yeah.
The emotional, like with the nervous system is, I find myself like I told the story on the show before, but I was outside with my kids and my neighbor who I barely knew, just had moved in. They were scootering around us while we were having a conversation, which is like nothing to me. Like doesn't even bother me that they're like scooting in and out and up and down. But then one of them jumped off the scooter and the scooter fell and I just like jumped up in the air. And then she's like, do you know you have PTSD? And I was like,
yeah, classic.
You know, but I'm like, what? And so those kind of things are like whistling. I mean, I have ADHD, so are some things that like just would be that trigger me, but realizing that I do have PTSD and though they come out in these moments where they're, you know, you feel like you're just kind of cruising along, everything's chill. And then out of nowhere.
Yeah. Getting startled easily is what's interesting is that's a sign of PTSD, or it can also just be a sign of being highly sensitive, but I'm that way too. And, And also I don't know, I'm a little bit nerdy with like biohacking type stuff, but I've always worn, the only one I have left is an Oura ring, but I've worn a lot of those wearables like the Whoop I used to wear and a Fitbit, and my heart rate variability is extremely low for somebody, you know, I mean, my age, I'll be 53 tomorrow, but
happy birthday.
Like, but still I'm, you know, I thank you, but like I work out, I eat really healthy, I sleep, I meditate. I should have a really good kind of robust heart rate variability. And the but it's very low. And so when it's very low, it's as if your body is, and I'm saying all this stuff like I know what the fuck I'm talking about. I don't really. I just, you know, I like learn this stuff from various little podcasts. But my understanding is that when your heart rate variability is very low, especially if it's not due to health reasons, or physical, it's like your body is in a constant state of fight or flight. So it's like you're always on edge is what that is an indication of. And I do all kinds of work to try to, you know, get my heart rate variability to go up. And so I'm not in that state, but that's ongoing work. And an interesting characteristic of full-blown sociopaths is that they have no startle reflex. So they will not get startled. Even the things that like normal people would get startled by, like a huge loud noise or a bang or somebody like jumping out of the closet, they just don't really have a startle response.
Oh, God. I guess
which
they
is
couldn't.
Creepy.
It's super creepy. Like I get I can startle myself. Like if I see my reflection.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, it's part of how they get away with what they do, because they, not only do they not have a startle response, but they just don't get stressed out. So, I mean, this guy, the lies that he pulled off in front of other people.
Right.
Like in my brain, if he was lying, like, you know, so these people have the ability to go out on a world stage or in front of a bunch of people or walk into some place and pretend to be somebody they're totally not, in a way that most normal people, and especially if you're kind of a sensitive person, I would like, I couldn't handle that. I couldn't handle that. You know, that's why they're also good at jobs like, you know, super high stakes trading or things that like would make a lot of people really nervous.
Oh my God. My ex was a gambler, and I swear to God, like I'd never like sweat through more things, like shaking. I wasn't playing, but just watching. And they could just be like,
I can't stand gambling, any of that. Yeah. And
they could just do it with like, and I'm like, there's a lot of fucking money on the table. And
and they need constant stimulation, and they're not that stressed out by losing. They're like, oh, well. And, you know, the guy in my story, when it's like, when there was any downtime or what, he would sit there and play fucking Call of Duty and like those crazy video games. Like I could never, it's just, they just need that constant stimulation. And then at the same time, they don't get stressed out by things that, like that's stimulating to them. Whereas for me, you know, high stakes gambling, it's like, I don't want any part of that. It's way too stressful.
No, I'm stressed the fuck out. I get home and like, if it's a day that I don't have my kids, it's weird. I like, I don't have the TV on. I have nothing on. I just like sit and there's like nothing, silence. I might be working or I'm doing something, but I'm like, I don't need even the TV on. I don't understand people that can be like, oh, I'm just gonna have the TV on while I'm working.
I get overwhelmed by, I can't, like, even like if you go to a waiting room at the dentist or a doctor's office and they have a TV on with some talk show, it's like, why? I find all that like, I don't even have a TV, but I find all that sort of sensory input, like it's too much noise. It stresses me out.
It totally stresses me out. I even on an airplane, like don't watch the movie I watch like someone else's movie, like a couple rows above, like with no sound. I'm not even watching. I just catch it I'm just seeing it. But there's so many times where I'm like, I just sit in nothing, in silence, or, you know, I'm the type of person who like, if I'm trying to figure out where I'm driving, like the radio has to be turned down. Cause like, I can't figure out where I'm supposed to be turning.
It's like we crave peace.
Yeah.
I think we just crave, after everything that happened and all that stress and being on edge around another person, like on the
I
other
can't
side of
even
this
imagine.
stuff.
Yeah.
I just
And I
want
mean,
peace. That's why, like, I don't date. I don't want anything to do with any drama, nothing. I don't even want to watch, like, I don't really watch movies unless I know, I just don't watch movies very much, but I don't want to watch anything stressful. I don't want
yeah.
to, I don't like read thrillers. I read a lot, but I don't want to read any thrillers or anything upsetting, and or like watch any.
Well, you lived it. I mean, like, look at your story. You like master manipulated, coerced, sexually, financially, emotionally, lost everything that meant anything to you and the people around you. Then on the lam for this guy for how, like for that amount of time. And then to end up in Rikers and he's fucking roaming free like that. You've done it. You've lived it. Like you need fucking peace, bestie.
I got a whole book too to write because I stepped into some bonkers shit afterwards too. My defenses were down. I was like, well,
right.
It's public knowledge. I only have, debt. I don't have any money to take. So why would somebody come in my life to fuck shit up just for fun? Oh yeah, apparently. So I stepped into some other stuff, and I've got a whole other book to write, especially because this book, I talk about when I was arrested in Tennessee and the jail there. And then, and I talk about being extradited to Rikers, which was crazy, on an airplane with like the, shackles.
Oh my fuck. Oh my God.
And then I talk about the first, I think I was at Rikers for 10 days before I got out on bail. And then eventually after a year, I have to go back for 4 months. But I don't get to write about all of those stories, I have some pretty crazy stories from my time there. And I just have a lot more to write, and I've got a whole second book with a lot to say in that one too. So I want to write that somehow when I can.
From all of this, like, what is good? If you could teach somebody something, like a young baddie right now that's listening, like what is like a tool we can put in their toolkit?
I don't know about a specific tool, but I just, something I've noticed, and it might take a really long time, but a lot of people, and myself included, feel like there's some benefit that can come from being completely broken open. And it sucks because, I would never want other people to be hurt and my whole life to be destroyed. Like, why would anybody want that? Mm-hmm. But it happened. And one result is that being so completely broken open and destroyed kind of, I don't know how to say this without it sounding potentially hokey, but like can potentially open you up in almost spiritually, like where you sort of become a different person in a way.
Mm-hmm. No, it's not hokey at all. I love that. I feel like, and when because you're broken down to, like, again, I love that, even that visual of like you're broken open for new growth and a different, a stronger, more powerful you coming from.
Yeah. I mean, I talked about this recently where I guess it's like a different level of awareness, right? And who knows, maybe I would have become more self-aware over time anyway, or just going through menopause or whatever. But I feel like I definitely feel like a very different person. I feel certainly much wiser. I feel like, whatever I'm able to rebuild going forward, like, you're not going to want to fuck with me. Like, yes. Don't try to fuck with me. And I just feel much more, I don't know, just sort of awake to certain things and extremely, extremely self-aware. So, I mean, I'm one of those people where if something happens and it upsets me, I immediately am asking myself the question, like, okay, what is this? Why is this upsetting me, and like what's the trigger, and you know, this, and I don't mean something that would upset anybody in that same situation, but like, why is this type of a comment bothering me so much? And then inevitably it will, you know, I can trace it back to like some dynamic from my childhood or something. I just feel like there's a level of opening up and kind of self-awareness on the other side of it. But I would feel a lot better about that if I was more recovered in other ways as well. So
you're doing it. Like, I mean, I know you're in recovery, and it's really hard to recover from these kind of people. And I'm excited for your next book so that I can have you back on to talk about the next fucking shit.
Thank you. I'm doing another docuseries too, which I would imagine would happen before I'm able to get another book out. But another thing I always tell people is that, you know, and I'm sure you're completely aware of this, is there's no, you know, it sucks when people victim blame, but at the same time, there are certain characteristics that these people are able to take advantage of. And they're all of the characteristics that make one a good target are good things. And so, you know, it tends to happen that it's very common that, you know, people who've been through this sort of thing, we end up having a lot in common personality wise. Yeah. And then I also just tell people to be really, really, really cautious, because I can't tell you how many, it's happened to me multiple times. And I've heard from other people too, where they've stepped into it again, because you sort of don't think it's going to happen again.
Right. Right. But you're still that person, right? So you're a target to the next thing. And again,
yeah, but now I've done so much work to understand what is it that makes me particularly a particularly good target. And, you know, even in business, I could see people trying to take advantage of that. So, I mean, now I'm much more eyes wide open about that kind of thing.
Okay. Show me your book, because I wish I had it sitting here so I could put it on, but it will be on my bookshelf.
Yeah.
I love the cover. It's so pretty.
Oh, thank you. And this is a silhouette of my dog, Leon, on the back. He was kind of what got me through all of this.
I love it. The girl with the duck tattoo. And she does have a duck tattoo.
I do have a duck tattoo. It was my the logo for my brand, One Lucky Duck.
Man. Well, I feel like a lucky duck knowing you now.
Thank you.
And I welcome you to the Bestie Gang. I would love to invite you into my club. There's no weird culty shit that happens over here. We just are a band of bitches trying to get loud and help women understand what they're doing and going through. It's not them. And I'd like to invite you to be a BFF, which is a bitch fighting for freedom. Yeah,
I'm down for that, for sure.
I love it. Well, welcome. Welcome to the Bestie Gang, bitches. It's like, we're doing some big things. And I'm so incredibly inspired by your story and your journey, and going out and writing about it and talking about it, and definitely coming on our show and speaking to us and helping us understand, you know, just how you can be hoodwinked, and it's not, and you can turn your pain into purpose and power, and you're doing just that. So, where can our listeners find you?
I'm most active on Instagram. It's just my full name, at Sarma Melngailis. On Instagram. I'm also writing stuff on Substack and posting there more and more. It's my name, Sarma Melngailis. And there's a website for my book. So if people want to get it, it's on Amazon, but they can get it directly from the printer, which is better for me, or they can also get a signed copy from me. And the website is just the title of the book, thegirlwiththeducktattoo.com.
Love it. I love it.
Thank you.
Sarma, you're our new bestie. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Bitch is a Bad Word.
Thank you.
And we will be connecting and doing some cool things together.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks.
What an amazing, inspiring story. Whew. I think that we can all learn a few things from her journey. And definitely check out our book. We'll put everything in the show notes. Remember, there is no safety in staying silent. If you or your loved one is in immediate danger, please use 911. Crash on a friend's couch. Do whatever you have to do to get safe. Your safety is the most important thing to us. Thehotline.org is available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at thehotline.org. And you can use their phone number, 1-800-799-7233. That's 1-800-799-SAFE, S-A-F-E. They are available for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, completely anonymous. They got your back, besties. Reach out to us. Send me your texties from your XDs. You can send them old-fashioned way. Slide in my DMs at Bitches a Bad Word Pod. TikTok and YouTube is Bitches a Bad Word. You can reach us on our phone number, which is 331-BITCHES. And join our Patreon. We've got a band of bitches over there on patreon.com/bitches a bad word. There's free tiers, there's paid tiers. The paid tiers give you all sorts of added benefits, like paid stuff does, but there's no pressure to join the paid group. You get some perks like merch discounts, sneak peeks, ad-free listening, all those things. But there's also a free tier, and there's some really amazing women over there that are rebuilding their network, their net worth, they're sharing in different ways. And I just seen an amazing bestie gang growing over there. And if this podcast is something that, you love listening to, please do take a moment right now to like, share, subscribe, review. I'd love a good, I'd love a review, whatever your reviews want to be. And you can follow along the Bitches a Bad Word podcast journey on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you listen to your shows. We drop our episodes every Tuesday, and our bitch sessions on Thursday. So we will see you next Tuesday, besties. I am so incredibly grateful for you showing up every week. I love you. You've got my heart. You are just in the bestie gang with me forever. And I can't wait for this journey to continue. And thank you for giving me your time. And I hope that we are building your bestie toolkit so that you can get to a place where you feel like, fuck yes, I'm like LFG. And whenever that is, thank you. Got your back, besties. Our editor is Kevin Mackler. Our music was composed by Drew Kevorkian. Our art was created by Eric Johnson and Kevin Roche. Our interns are absolute baddies. Our Patreon and Discord is managed by Kay. And this has been a Caliber Studio production. Bitches being bad.